Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me for this YouTube Live and TikTok Live update on Tropical Storm Ida. Unfortunately, lots of information that is not very good news this morning with regards to the overall intensity of this tropical system. The system looks vastly different than what it did just about 24 hours ago. We're looking at a much more organized tropical cyclone that is approaching the western part of Cuba. This system has the potential to bring significant impacts of storm surge, damaging winds, and heavy rainfall to parts of the Gulf Coast as we head towards late weekend and early next week. So we're going to try to take some time this morning, about the next 10 to 15 minutes or so, to break down the latest information with regards to Ida, as well as the potential impacts, track, and intensity that this system is likely going to have moving forward as we go through the weekend with its approach towards the northern Gulf Coast. As always, make sure you like the video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and comment your questions. I'm both live on TikTok and live on YouTube, so if you have any questions, I will intermittently try to check back on some of your comments and see if we can get those answered. But again, this morning, the latest information from the National Hurricane Center shows an intensifying tropical storm. Hurricane hunters are investigating the system presently, and it doesn't take very much to notice on this infrared satellite that this is an intensifying system that is likely going to be a hurricane shortly, within the next potentially even just couple of hours as it approaches the western part of Cuba. Looking at the satellite, the infrared satellite this morning, you can tell that this system has gone through some big structural changes. How do we know that? Last night, we were seeing some, what I like to refer to as popcorn storms that were starting to fire up around the center of circulation near Jamaica. Overnight last night, over the very warm waters of the Western Caribbean, we kind of talked about late yesterday evening, the wind shear was relaxing over the system and dry air was starting to become less impactful. And as that started to happen, we started to see these thunderstorms, as we call them, hot towers. Those are thunderstorms that extend through a very large depth of the atmosphere. They extend way up, and that indicates these very bright, cold color cloud tops. And you see some of that lightning that's embedded within this infrared satellite. That indicates some robust updrafts of these thunderstorms, telling me that this is strengthening and has a very favorable environment for intensification. Looking at the water vapor imagery, is there anything that is hindering this system? Well, not very much. There is still a little bit of wind shear that is evident on the southern side. If we look at this satellite animation, you see these kind of cirrus clouds that are fanning out like this, especially on the south side of the circulation. We're not yet seeing a ton of ventilation on the western side of the circulation because we still have a little bit of wind shear that is coming up on the southern side of this. But other than that, on most quadrants, especially within the northern quadrant, the eastern quadrant, and the southern quadrant of the system, we've got what we call radial outflow. Fancy term for saying that this system is breathing well. It's got good ventilation in the atmosphere. And when you have a very well ventilated storm, it means that the environment is favorable for strengthening. As we look forward in time, this system is going to be moving over a short blip of some land interaction. The western tip of Cuba is likely going to briefly halt this organization, but it's not going to be over land very long. That strip, that western part of Cuba, is the thinnest and most flat part of Cuba. In fact, western parts of Cuba is much flatter than eastern Cuba. And that means that we're not going to see a ton of weakening, if any weakening at all. It may briefly hinder the structure of this system late this evening as this begins to cross over Cuba, the Isle of Youth, and into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, I will tell you that over the past couple of days, I feel like I've kind of mentioned my concern with regards to this system moving into the Gulf of Mexico. It's going to find a haven of very favorable upper-level winds. If you look at this map behind me, you can see all of this green from Louisiana, off the coast in the Gulf of Mexico. This indicates wind shear that is very light as our system begins to move into the Gulf of Mexico. Green means all systems go. And on top of that, I showed this yesterday, but it's worth reiterating. You've heard about the loop current, before. Systems like Rita, an infamous storm that moved right over the loop current and rapidly intensified. Laura did the same. And, you know, I hate comparing two storms, but when talking about systems that have the ability to rapidly intensify, this is one of the things that you've got to make sure you're well aware of. Where's the loop current? Where is the water very warm, very hot, like bath water, but it also extends through a greater depth of the atmosphere, or the water column, I guess I should say. More water that is warm at a greater depth means that you have more fuel to really provide extra energy for these storms to get going with favorable upper level conditions. And that's exactly, unfortunately, what we've got. For folks that are watching from South Louisiana, this is your warning. Be prepared, not scared. Get those preparations done today. Finish them in earnest. And if you're in coastal South Louisiana and an evacuation order is called, please heed that warning and heed the warnings from your local officials. This system is going to be moving. Let me draw this again. This system, as it's currently just south of the Isle of Youth, will be passing over some of the warmest and most infamously known for rapidly intensifying systems dating back, right? Decades that we have the historical data when the loop current is combined with very favorable upper level conditions. This is likely going to be a rapidly evolving and probably pretty ugly scenario with regards to the satellite imagery that will show this being an intensifying powerful hurricane as it approaches the coast. All folks, though, from Acadiana to South Central Louisiana, the Bayou parishes, Southeast Louisiana, New Orleans Metro, over towards the Alabama and Mississippi coastline should be paying very close attention and finishing those preparations today. Greatest impacts are going to be in the area that I'm outlining here in pink, but they will extend inland well after this makes a landfall. There are some nitty-gritty details that I'm about to dive into, so if you have any questions, let me quickly look at them. I'll just take a quick glance over onto YouTube Live. Hey, Abigail, you're so welcome. Jennifer says, thank you, Scott. I'm in Crowley. Hey, Jennifer, I've been waiting to see your storm update. Good to see you, Jennifer. And Mary Beth Broussard says, do we expect Ida to wobble? Let's talk about this. Wobble watching is always something that we talk about with regards to landfalling systems, right? We watch them wobble back and forth. And of course, that's going to be something that we're watching over the next couple of days. What is steering this system? Before I show you this model, I want to talk about the track. This is important. This is the latest track from the National Hurricane Center. They now have this making a landfall. And you know what? This is actually, let me refresh this. Here's the latest track. The latest track brings this as a powerful Category 3 hurricane with max winds of 120 miles per hour. 120 miles per hour with a landfall just towards the west of Houma, Dulac, Cocodrie. 120 miles per hour at 7 p.m. on Sunday. So you're talking about roughly 48 hours from now, right? A little bit longer than that, closer to about 56 or so, but you've got Saturday and into Sunday evening, you're looking at about 48 hours or so before landfall. But impacts are going to begin before then. We've got storm surge watches that are flying all the way from the areas that I've got outlined here. And you also have hurricane watches that extend through the metro New Orleans area and for all areas outlined in pink as well. So we've got hurricane watches and storm surge watches flying. That means that hurricane conditions are expected within 48 hours. The latest track brings this as a major hurricane with 120 mile per hour sustained winds at landfall through a large section of Terrebonne, St. Mary, and into Lafourche and Lower Jefferson Parish. That's where the core of strongest winds is going to be. But I always mention this when I'm doing these breakdowns. Don't just look at the center line for where the greatest impacts are going to be. Also remember, look at this. We're still, again, 48 hours or more from landfall, and you can see that we've still got some uncertainty with the forecast track. There's still an average error of over 80 miles, typically 48 to 52 hours out. where you have 80 miles of uncertainty of where this system may eventually make landfall. Could we see the track further west? Could we see the track further east? Yes. So it's important to remember that all areas within this cone, and even way outside of the cone, need to be prepared for significant impacts. On the current track, however, the greatest impacts are expected in this region that I'm extending basically from Lafayette all the way towards Gulfport and Biloxi. Notice how I have that circle way larger on the eastern side, because again, that eastern side, typically the larger wind field on the eastern side, as well as the rain bands that extend well out, hundreds of miles away from the center of circulation. Some spots within these rain bands that set up on the within the center and east of the center, we're likely going to see some spots that receive anywhere from 10 to 20 inches of rain in some localized hotspots, both in and around the eye wall, but also in those rain bands that set up away from where the eye comes on shore. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Make sure to give me a like or a comment in the video. And if you're watching from TikTok Live, I know that if you like the video, it helps promote this video so that more people are watching. So I appreciate that for all my folks that are watching on TikTok Live as well. Let's talk about the timing. And I want to break down the track. I want to break down some of the impacts that we're expecting for the coastline. So let's look at the GFS forecast model. The latest data, we're going to get a new model run here. Let's see. Hadn't started running yet, but it will be soon. We'll get a new model forecast shortly with regards to the GFS. What we have right now, high pressure steering this off towards the west. You see that ridge of high pressure right here in red? Winds around high pressure rotate clockwise. So our system is being steered to the northwest. Makes sense, right? Think about the high as a rock in a river. Kind of an old school kind of thought process, but a rock in a river. What happens with the water? It flows around the rock, right? So high pressure is protecting the eastern seaboard, so our system cannot turn up north. Instead, as I go forward in time, as I'll show you, as this high pressure starts to build in just a tad, our system has to go around the high. So by Sunday morning, here's our high positioned right about here. And let me make this just a hair larger so y'all can see it better. Here's our high right about here, and our system is being steered around the high towards Louisiana. Winds around the high rotate clockwise. So our system is that water, right, if you will, like a fluid that is being pushed around that atmospheric ridge of high pressure. And as we go towards Sunday morning, this is Sunday morning, we've got an intensifying, likely major hurricane that is going to be moving towards South Louisiana's coastline. Fortunately, this system will be moving at a speed that hopefully it will not be able to pick up nearly the maximum capacity of storm surge that it would if it was moving slower. But for folks along South Louisiana and coastal Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, we have an incredibly vulnerable coastline. We know that. And the way that this is coming in, the water is going to be piled up. And some spots now are expected to see a storm surge, and I just pulled this up a moment ago. Let's go click it for you. Some areas are likely going to get inundated with 7 to 11 feet of storm surge per the latest National Hurricane Center advisory. And if this storm does get stronger, again, it's expected to make landfall as a Category 3. I would not be surprised in the slightest to see this come ashore as a Category 4. And I don't say that to alarm you or scare you. I say that because I want you to be prepared, not scared. I want you to be alert and ready, especially if you are in a low-lying spot and you're saying, Scott, I'm on the fritz. Do I evacuate? Do I wait it out? We haven't flooded before. Not all systems are the same, right? Think to Zeta last year. A lot of folks in New Orleans are like, Zeta was moving, right? It was hauling. This isn't going to be moving that fast. It will be moving at a speed that it's not stalling, but it's not going to be moving that quickly when it gets here. In fact, it's probably going to take a good bit of time for this to move north, and that's going to increase the duration of impacts across the Louisiana coastline. So 7 to 11 feet of storm surge is now expected along our coastal areas and our south and eastern facing shores. So if you live in a low-lying spot, Venetian Isles, Shell Beach, Wyclowski, over towards coastal areas Grand Isle, Golden Meadow, Cocodrie, Montague, Galliano, and you know that you are vulnerable to storm surge, even across closer to Vermilion Bay, right? If this came a little bit further west, which it could, or a little bit further east, and bring significant storm surge values even to the Mississippi coast of 7 to 8, maybe even higher feet of storm surge there. If you're in a low-lying spot and you know that you're vulnerable from storm surge and you're within an evacuation that has been called or will be called, please take my advice and leave. If your local officials encourage you to leave and you have the financial ability to do so and you live in a structurally not sound place, leave. Don't put yourself at risk. We always say hide from the wind, run from the water. And that statement is very true with regards to a major hurricane landfall. In terms of wind speeds, let's take a look at the latest GFS forecast model. I expect some of these numbers will be higher than what is being shown here. But for all of the areas that I'm outlining here in pink, power outages are expected. You will lose power in a large section of South Louisiana, and some places may be out of power for weeks. And I don't say that lightly, but you can look at past storms of this caliber, and power outages are going to be widespread and extend well inland, which means that the rate of restoring power will be slower because of the impact zone that is going to face the impacts from this system. Now, on this particular model run, landfall is very close towards Morgan City, Cocodrie, with that core of strongest winds basically extending from New Iberia to New Orleans. That's where hurricane force winds would be expected, and that's where the greatest damage would be expected. That most intense inner core, though, that eye wall, that would be confined to areas basically south of Baton Rouge, even into Baton Rouge, similar to the damage seen from Gustav on this particular model run, where winds could gust well above 100 miles per hour to near 130 to 150 miles per hour along the coast. See these deeper shadings of purple here? That's where you could have wind gusts ahead of or greater than 130 miles per hour along coastal regions of Terrebonne, Lower Lafourche, and even into Lower Jefferson Parish on this particular model run. So don't take this model guidance with exact certainty. These numbers could extend further east or further west depending on exactly where that track comes in. In terms of rainfall amounts, we're looking at a general swath of anywhere between 10 to 20 inches of localized hotspots. I do think that some areas will see 10 to 20 inches of rain. Exactly where those set up, I'm a meteorologist, not someone that, preaches the gospel. It's not the gospel truth, but I do believe that wherever that center comes on shore, you're looking at a hotspot of at least 10 to 20 inches of rain in some hot spots, and even well east of the center. See these rain bands that are going to be extending way out here? Some spots within those rain bands likely to see the 10, 15-inch rain amounts, with generally speaking 6 to 10 inches of rain across South Louisiana. The cutoff, though, will be sharp. Notice west of Rain, Louisiana, Jeff Davis Parish, Ville Platte over to Lake Charles, rain amounts much lower, hardly an inch of rain in Lake Charles on this model. So you get the idea. The track, along that track and way east of the center, we will see much higher rainfall amounts. Let me look at a few comments from y'all on YouTube and on TikTok Live and see if we've got any questions. Let's see. Hey, Hunter's mom from Chalmette. We've got Melissa says it makes perfect sense. Thank you so much for explaining everything. Wonderful. Could it still possibly hit Lake Charles? We've got from Jimrick, Joseph. Yes, Lake Charles is still within the cone, right? Let me go bring this back up. Lake Charles is still on the edge of that cone. So with 100% certainty, no, Lake Charles is not out of the woods yet. However, our model guidance today is very focused on a landfall somewhere between Lafayette and New Orleans. That's kind of the zone of the most tightly clustered where our models are located. However, you can definitely have shifts 80 miles in either direction, being that we're still 2 days out from landfall. Could make it as far west as Lafayette, could make it as far east as New Orleans. You still have that opportunity for track shifts. Not drastic. We're not talking this going to Houston or this going to Pensacola, right? But we're talking there could still be some shifts. That's the reason that we have a cone, because that accounts for the uncertainty. So my takeaway points for all of you that are watching, again, if you're watching from the New Orleans Metro and you're thinking, hey, do I leave? The answer for New Orleans, as I currently stand and look at the latest data, everyone in Southeast Louisiana should be preparing for significant impacts and prepare as if the storm is coming to you. I don't say that lightly. This is going to be a significant event, even if it makes landfall near Homa. New Orleans and company across the river parishes, New Orleans, the North Shore, St. Tammany, Tangipahoa, over towards Washington Parish, you're going to see significant impacts on that eastern quadrant of this system. And if you don't want to be without power for potentially 3 to 5 days or more in parts of South Louisiana, in the New Orleans Metro, leave. If you know that those type of hassles, or you have someone that has a medical condition and can't be without power, and you have the financial do so to leave, leave. In New Orleans, a 50-mile shift in this track closer to here would put a direct landfall of a major caliber storm. That is something that we have to be prepared that could happen. That's a realistic thing to say. It could happen. It could not. And someone is going to see a direct landfall from a likely major hurricane, and the impacts are going to be destructive. You just have to continue to watch and wait and see exactly where that track takes this system, because that's where the core of the greatest impacts will be, along that center where we have that eye wall, right? That's where that most intense Category 3 or higher wind field will be located. So again, if you're in New Orleans and you're thinking about leaving, I've told my parents the same thing. I've told my partner is not here, but I said, if you are thinking about leaving and you're on the edge of, do I leave, do I go, and you've got trees surrounding your house and you want to feel safe and you want to feel as if you don't have that worry, then you leave. And hey, you spent $150 to get out of Dodge and you protect yourself. In New Orleans right now, I think that you wait. If you're on that edge, you wait for the evening model data, and then tonight into early tomorrow morning, if an evacuation was called for parts of South Louisiana, including the New Orleans Metro, you make that decision. This is a situation that is going to continue to evolve, and we need to make sure that we're staying prepared, staying alert, and ready to roll if that call is made. Do not put yourself in harm's way by choosing to stay when you have an opportunity to leave. That is my final point. I hope that you all got some useful information. If you have any more questions, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I'm on all social media platforms, and I'm going to be doing some freelance work this weekend, so I'll have continued updates with the latest on the storm, and I'll have a lot for you coming up in the next couple of hours. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you guys soon.